Welcome to Legacy of Faith, Peak Creek Stories, where we preserve the legacy and faith of the church by interviewing individuals in the church. In this week's episode, we interview longtime Deacon Harold and his wife, Ann. So let's just get it right into the first thing, introductions. Just let us know a little bit about who you are and kind of just a brief history of your life in the church. Harold, I'll let you start, and then we'll go to Ann.
Okay, I'm Harold Bowlin. I grew up in the church from the time I was just a little baby until now. So I've been here basically all my life, except for just a few years when I lived away from here in Jefferson. I didn't come, but basically I've been here all my life.
And I grew up in the Methodist church. I attended a Baptist church for a short time period, and I had not heard of the Church of the Brethren until I had met Harold, and we met at work. And he introduced me to the church, and I really liked the idea of simplicity, the simplicity aspect of the church. And I had grown up with a neighbor that was Mennonite, and I loved their simplicity, the dress, just their family, the activities, and so this was pretty close to that for me.
Can either of you share a story about maybe a past pastor or member or special person that you really believe, or even multiple people that really helped to shape the church's identity?
Early on, I think Fred Dynes was one of the major inspirational preachers here for the church. He did a lot for this church. His sermons were very short, but they were very much to the point. I mean, you got it. His message, he was never more than 20 minutes for a service ever that I saw, and he was just a great inspiration, I thought, to the church here. And later on, we talked about Ricky Thomas and the influence that he had with getting our fall festival started and all the influences that he did. So I think Ricky was a great influence later on in this church.
Okay. And what years did those two ministers serve, approximately?
Oh, Fred Dynes, from the time I was just an infant on, I remember him off and on. He would pastor this church, or sometimes New Haven and Sparta, different churches, but he was here off and on for many years.
50s and 60s.
Yeah, in the 50s and 60s, and maybe even later in the 70s up in there. And in the 80s, he would visit, I think, and preach, but mainly early on in my lifetime, 50s and 60s mostly was when he was here pretty much full time.
And Ricky was here in the mid to late 1990s.
Somewhere in that range, I don't remember exactly.
Early 2000 maybe. Ricky got our apple butter
Fall festival
started in the parking lot. We were in the parking lot. We would just come. We had we borrowed borrowed a pot from another church, and we were just in the parking lot. And some of the hand stirring it. People would, a few of the members would come with their bibbed overalls or whatever, and that was it. And then it kind of revolved into, on the back deck. We started doing a little festival on the back deck of this church and in the basement of this church. So it just evolved. It just kept evolving until what we've got now.
So when that fall festival started, it was just in the parking lot making apple butter. How many volunteers were working on this project?
Maybe we would have 8 or 10 people probably that were here actually stirring the apple butter, because you had to, after 5 minutes, your arms would get tired. But you had to constantly stir it with a paddle, and out there, big copper pot. We maybe made 120 or 150 pints that first year.
I don't have any idea.
It wasn't a lot, but I remember it was really good apple butter that we made. But probably no more than 15 people helped that first time.
And when was the first year of this, approximately?
I'm gonna think. I know I have to think about how old Hillary was. Ricky's youngest daughter is a couple years older than Hillary, and so I'm thinking probably in 96, 97-ish.
Somewhere in
that range.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did it go from those humble beginnings to what it is today with several hundred people coming for all these other products.
It just, every year we got a little bit bigger.
Yeah,
we
we'd
made
add something every
right.
year.
We would make a little more apple butter every year. And then, a few years ago when Chris made the suggestion we do kraut. And man, from then on, it's just blossomed.
Well, we added that back deck.
Right.
And I don't know what year we added the deck, but then when we added the deck, we had a place to move the apple butter to the back deck,
right,
or the pot to
right.
the back deck, and then we had a place to do a little bit of a festival, back there, community festival.
We'd have some live music that would come and play while we were.
Yeah, and then we added music, right. We added games for the kids. I mean, it was like every year we would say, let's do this, let's try this, let's add this. So yeah, it's just kind of evolved, right. Kind of like we're doing now.
All right. So, and was there any other people that you think of, past pastor, member, or any special person that you believe shaped the church's identity?
Right, I'm sure there have been a lot, but Ricky was the one that came to mind. Something else that Ricky did, that because I like to be organized, is he organized the church into committees. He's the one that started us with the different committees, which I never heard of that. I mean, of course, I'd never been involved with the governance of the church before, so I wasn't really familiar. But he's the one that started the different committees, and which I really liked. Before that, I think really the pastor and maybe the pastor's wife were kind of doing it all, kind of, sort of. And but I really like that idea of the committees and getting the church members more involved.
It got more of the members involved, that's for sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
That's good. And of course, you two have been very active with the church. Of course, Harold, you're a deacon and have been for quite some time. How long have you been deacon?
20 years at least, I guess. I don't know exactly. I really don't.
And what kind of work is involved with that?
Basically, just serving the church members, doing what's needed when needed, just helping out in any way that you can. Just being a servant to God.
Right. Absolutely. Of course, some of that includes plowing Lois's garden.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That's
and others.
And others. Right.
Little snow removal here and there.
Occasionally snow removal when it's necessary.
All kinds of
firewood.
Things. Yeah, firewood. Yep.
Getting
of course,
out of the ditch.
In your professional life, what are some of the jobs you've done and are continuing to do?
Are you talking about for the church?
No, just in your personal life.
Oh, in my personal life. Well, I worked for the state for 31 years in various jobs. I worked with the Department of Social Services back in 74 to 78, and then I worked with the Employment Security Commission from 82 until about 93, I guess, or so. 93. Yeah. And then I worked for the Department of Transportation until I retired in 2009. So, again, working for the state of North Carolina, serving the citizens in various capacities. So I feel like my career's kind of been a career of service.
That's good. That's good. And Ann, you've served in this church, I know, in recent memory, as secretary and treasurer.
Yes.
Is there any other roles you fulfilled here?
I used to do children's church quite often, take the children downstairs during service. And I attempted to teach Sunday school. I am not a teacher, but I attempted to teach Sunday school for a while too. Okay. And clean occasionally, help with meals.
I know for sure it's more than occasionally.
Yeah, help with meals. Just help where I can. What I can do. I'm kind of limited to what I can do. So.
I see it as a lot, Ann.
She does a lot on the fellowship meals, first Sunday meals.
Absolutely.
She's there about every first Sunday, helping get the food prepared.
And I believe I call her more than any other person in the church. So, and in your personal life, what kind of careers have you had?
Customer service. I grew up. My father had a shoe store, and I got pulled into the shoe store kicking and screaming when I was about 13. And so I helped there until I went to college. And then I stayed at home for a while. I had 2 children. early on and wanting to be a stay-at-home mom, and so I stayed at home as long as I could, which wasn't too long. But then I got a job with the state. Very, very blessed to get a job with the state, working with the Employment Security Commission, and that's how Harold and I met. He worked in Allegheny County, and I was working in Ashe County. But I would go to Allegheny County one day a week to I took unemployment claims or helped people that were unemployed. And so that's how we met. We would go to lunch on Thursdays, I think it was back then, and that's kind of how we met and became friends, and then got married.
Okay. So how has the church changed over the years?
To me, it's a lot less formal now than it was when I was a kid growing up. I remember all the men and the boys sat on one side of the church, all the women sat on the other side. Women all wore long dresses. A lot of them would have the little prayer caps on. And it was just a lot more formal back then. I remember some of the preachers would have the white collars and the frock coats and a hat. A lot of them would have a black hat. And, I mean, it just more like what you would see in a traditional Mennonite or Amish type service back when I was a kid. But over the years, it's that changed. Then the children started migrating more to one side to be with their mothers, and then eventually it just kind of dissolved and people sat wherever they wanted to. But to me, that was a big change from when I was a kid growing up until now. Now folks wear jeans, ladies wear slacks. I mean, it's changed a lot.
Right. But
the fundamental beliefs of the church, I don't think have changed, but just the dress code has changed a lot. I've noticed that.
What about you, Ann? How have you seen the church change over the years?
Well, I've been here for 33 years now. I think the main thing for me, I already talked about it earlier, was just the organization, just trying to get us organized in business and service, better organized. Because back, when I first started coming, I would hear a couple of people talk about helping other people or some things they'd done in a community, and I'm like, I would really like to do that, but I don't know where these people are or who these people are. How do you find out about these people? So I just like the fact that it's a little more organized, and we share probably needs better now maybe than we did back then.
And is there anything you particularly you, Harold, with your longer past in this church, is there anything you miss from the old days that you wish were still here?
Not really. I don't really want to go back to those days where you feel like you have to wear a white shirt and black pants and be formal, and I didn't like that. It was too formal. I'm happy the way it is now. I like where we're at.
Okay. What's a favorite memory of the church you all have, whether it's a church event or a tradition from years past?
One of my favorite things used to be, especially as a young child, was the homecoming celebration. Every 4th of July, that weekend, we would have a carry-in meal. And the church at that time was just a little white church set closer to the road. We had some big white pine trees here beside the church. It provided shade. There was a level area of ground that we could set about 4 tables out there, and those tables would be crammed full of food. We would have people that come back from Maryland and other places. A lot of folks in this community left to go to Maryland to find work. They would go up our Beta Shoe Company and other places to find work because there wasn't anything to do here. And they would try their best. That was the week of their vacation. They would come back here and visit family and relatives, and you'd see people that once a year that you would never see if it wasn't for that homecoming service. And I enjoyed that. They were cousins, distant relatives, stuff that you would never have seen other than that service. Plus, it was a lot of good food. I remember all the good potato salads and deviled eggs and all the stuff that would be on the table out there. 4 tables full of food, and I thought as a kid, man, this is great. So I really remember those homecoming services back when I was a kid.
I'm curious to know if those wood tables downstairs are probably the
They
same
are
wood tables.
probably the same wood tables that we used down
Yeah,
there.
we've got to keep those tables.
Yeah, they're very old, but we used to set them on the grass
And
out
they're
there.
sturdy.
Yeah, they're sturdy, and under those white pine trees too.
Now, Harold, you mentioned something about the church cosmetically and structurally being different. Can you kind of give us a rundown of how the structure of the church has changed over the years?
Oh, I remember back probably in the 1960s, they decided to move the church further away from the road. We were within like 10 feet from the edge of the road out here. The road was real close. So they decided that they wanted to move the whole church back. So some of the members, I remember Fred Sheets, who lived down below Jimmy Church on Big Pea Creek Road. He was very instrumental in doing this. He was a dairy farmer and also did construction work. He and some of the other guys hired a company to come and go in, and they jacked up the church and put it on wheels and moved it back about 20 or 25 feet to its present location, and then jacked it up, dug out the dirt, and laid up blocks for a basement and have it fixed the way it is now. But that would have had to have been sometime in the 1960s. I don't remember exactly when that was, but I do remember us moving the church back, and then they bricked it and fixed it different. Of course, we've added on since then on the west side of the church. We've added bathrooms and more things, but it's basically the same building, just been moved back and bricked, and it looks a lot different now than when it did as a kid or whatever.
Absolutely.
There's a picture somewhere. We've got a plate, I think, with the picture of the way the church used to be. This is the white church, and you can see it was real close to the road at that time, but I think it's down in the basement somewhere.
For both of you, what's one thing your spouse does in their role that makes you especially proud of them?
Well, I know Ann spends a lot of time keeping the books, doing the treasury work. It's a hard job, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. She has to try to balance the books every month. So I'm proud of her for what she does there.
Absolutely. Nan?
Well, I'm going to say that I won the lottery when I married Harold. He has got a heart for giving. He's very unselfish. He'll do anything for any of the neighbors. If they're in need, he'll go help the neighbors. So this deacon role is a perfect role for him to be in.
You touched on this earlier, Ann, but how did you two meet, and what role did the church play in bringing you together?
Well, yeah, we met at work, and I don't remember if you ever came to church here before we were married.
I did. I think I came to a revival or maybe a revival here or something. And I remember at work, I remember one year at revival, Harold would host the preacher. He had, I guess, a new house. The house had just been built, and so the preacher needed a place to stay, and he was a single person by himself, so he hosted the preacher. Right. And I remember him talking to me about that, which that was before we actually probably started dating. We just did a lot of chatting, and then I think I came for revival a time or two, and I had two young children. I think they were like, I don't know, 9 and 10 or 10 and 11, and I wanted them to be in a church. And this church just, at least from the outside, just seemed to have quite a few children and to be a good place to be. So it all kind of worked together. Yeah.
What's a funny moment or unexpected moment that you've experienced while being here at Pea Creek?
We were talking about this earlier.
The thing that I remember, and I was just a youngster, maybe 10 or 12. I don't know exactly how old I was, but I remember attending a baptismal service. And there was a relatively large lady up in years, probably in her 70s, that decided she wanted to be baptized. Yeah, our age. But anyway, I think this happened in Cranberry Creek. I'm not exactly sure where it was at, but anyway, I know the lady and two preachers, and I don't remember who the preachers were. They waded out into the creek, got out about their waist, and they said, Well, they asked this lady if she would mind kneeling down in the water to make it easier to baptize her, because like she was a relatively large lady. So she got down on her knees, and they were getting ready to baptize her. And I think the preacher put his hand on her head and was getting ready to say a prayer. And suddenly she just starts floating down the creek. And the preacher looks around, and then this lady starts laughing. And then the preacher looked at the other preacher, and they laughed. And then the whole bank, it was full of spectators, just erupted in laughter. That because this lady, she laughed, the preachers laughed, and then everybody just erupted in laughter. And I remember that as a kid. I thought that was the funniest thing to see this lady just sitting there, just looking up, smiling, floating down the creek.
Okay, I have
You'd
one.
have to be in there.
Right.
Yeah, I have one too, and you probably would have had to been there too. But we were down in the basement. We were having foot washing communion service. Jim Hoffman was leading the service. Of course, we had the women's table and the men's table, and Jim was doing a great job, but was struggling just a little bit with the songs. We always sang some songs. We always would song and then a prayer or recitation or whatnot. So he was struggling a little bit. And for some reason, us, the girls at the women's table, got the giggles. And we all just giggled and giggled and giggled. And Libby started, and we all just lost it. I mean, we just lost it. We were trying not to giggle, trying not to be disrespectful, but it was kind of funny.
Jim trying to lead the singing.
Jim trying to lead the singing.
Mm-hmm.
And Libby and I both, we cannot go to a service now without thinking of that time. And of course, Hillary was just a little girl, probably 8 or 9 or 10. I'm sure Jane was there, and Vicki was probably there. I don't know who was there, but the little women's table just erupted in laughter during communion, and we shouldn't have done that. But
And just for context, for those watching may not know, Libby is Jim's wife. So,
Right.
So her laughing kind of makes it acceptable for everybody else to laugh.
Right.
that's it. That's it.
That's good. Was there ever a time when the church faced a big challenge? And if so, how did the church overcome it?
We've faced several big challenges. One, I know that we were several years here we did not have a pastor, and we were doing this pulpit field, inviting preachers from all over to come. Sometimes we couldn't get a preacher. We just do a music service. So we struggled there for several years between pastors, and that was a challenge, but we overcame that.
Well, we struggled without a pastor several
different times
at different
Right.
times, but always managed to
work
make
through
it
it.
through.
Right.
Yeah, and we always had a core. It felt like a core group of people who were steadfast, and they weren't going to leave no matter what. And then, of course, you always have a few that will come and go, but we struggled.
And in the church, of course, with the separation over the issues recently going to the covenant, a lot of the churches leaving the district to join the covenant brethren. That was an issue, but I don't think it was a big issue for this church. But
Right.
Basically, I think we were all pretty much in agreement to not make any changes.
What's a piece of advice you'd give to a young couple considering serving as a deacon and spouse?
Just be willing to give of yourself, give of your time. That's the main thing. Just have a giving spirit. Just be willing to give of yourself.
Be a servant.
Right, be a servant.
And don't think of yourself any better or any worse than anybody else.
Right.
We're all on the same
Right.
playing field, basically. So,
And what is your hope for the future of Peak Creek Church?
I hope it continues to grow and do as well as it has. We've done really well in the last few years, and I hope to see that continue, the growth and the participation. I just think I think we're on the right track.
so same thing. Just continue to grow and do more of what we're doing. Do more service projects. Help more people. Be a light. Be the salt and light in the community. Peak Creek community.
Before we conclude, is there just anything on your heart you want to share with us?
I think we pretty well covered.
I just feel blessed
Yeah.
and to be able to serve in what little capacity I've been able to do. It's just been a blessing for me.
Yeah, and I think we've got a great community here. The community spirit is here. A lot of it is based around our church here, and what we're doing. We've helped a lot of people in the last few years through some bad economic situations. So, I mean, it's just been a privilege to serve and to help folks in our community.
Well, thank you all so much.